Winnipeg rose up from the joining of two rivers, the Red and the Assiniboine. To the far north of Hudson's Bay and to the far south of the Mississippi and east into Saskatchewan, this system connected people across thousands of kilometers in all directions. For at least 6,000 years, Indigenous people have used this area as a place to gather, trade, create, and celebrate. Later, these waters would be used by European fur traders, with the area of the two rivers now called the Forks. A natural place for further settlement, the heart of the Métis Nation and a city called Winnipeg grew up around this ancient meeting place. First Mennonite Church of Winnipeg was founded in 1926 in the west end of Winnipeg. Our current building was built in the 1950s and expanded in the 1980s. A lot has changed since the building first went up, but much of our church remains essentially the same. Things were built to last, and with thoughtful caretaking and stewardship, the systems in place have remained fundamentally unchanged. This speaks to the dedication of our facility staff and the durability of these systems, which is a blessing, but it also means that some of our building technology is at least 70 years old. Manitoba's emissions per capita are lower than the Canadian average. This is encouraging, and we're headed in the right direction. I was able to do an analysis of First Mennonite's utility usage, including natural gas, electricity, water, sewage, garbage, and recycling. I also made an educated assessment of potential employee and church member transportation using gas-powered vehicles. FMC creates tons of CO2, with the majority coming from three areas. A grand total of 97 tons of CO2. This is equivalent to driving 400,000 kilometers in a car. To offset, we would need to plant 1,600 tree seedlings that live for 10 years. Winnipeg has extreme temperatures in different seasons, with our winters whipping up harsh Arctic conditions. Heating a building the size of a church requires significant consumption to pump out the amount of warmth that we need to survive. Most of FMC's CO2 comes from using natural gas to heat our boiler and water tanks. It's true that we need to heat the building in order to keep the inhabitants safe. It's also true that using natural gas hurts our environment. Many of us in the global north may be able to shield ourselves from the immediate and worsening impacts of climate change. Because it's not visible to us, we are able to push the crisis to the back of our minds, but that doesn't mean it isn't happening. Our actions have consequences that other people have to deal with. God is very clear in Scripture that ignoring those in need has dire consequences. Worldwide, it is the global south that will suffer first, with the poorest and war-stricken countries struggling most. FMC has members that come from the Democratic Republic of Congo, which has been identified as one of the most at-risk countries for climate change. Famine has worsened, with increased flooding in recent years. The ability of people to sustain natural disasters is worsened by violent armed conflict and diseases like malaria and Ebola. But no matter where you go, the people that will be hurt the most are those that are already vulnerable. Seniors, Indigenous people, disabled people, socially isolated, and others. Industries that will feel the effects of climate change most include agriculture and energy. Extreme heat and cold can affect the quality of crops or even wipe them out completely. Both floods and droughts are becoming more common. There's also a higher risk of failure in the power grid from increased consumption due to heavier air conditioning and heating demands. These are both significant industries for Manitobans. All households will lose income, and low-income households will suffer the most. What does it mean for us to be global citizens? How can we lead with kindness into the future? There are hardworking volunteers and staff at FMC, and without devaluing their work, most would agree that we suffer from a congregational listlessness, a general feeling of malaise, and a pessimism about the future of our church. Taking on the mantle of combating climate change might seem like too much for us to handle right now, but we have a biblical responsibility to take care of creation. In fact, one could theorize that it's a lack of action and discussion around issues like ecology that makes First Mennonite less appealing to potential and former members. God rewards the faithful who do good works in His name. Ideas like solar panels instead of natural gas or carpooling instead of driving are also possibilities. We need to focus on what we can do to lessen our CO2 output and think creatively about ways we can reduce or offset what is generated by FMC. Where we see barriers, others may see opportunities. Things around us may stay the same, or they may change. There's still time to make a difference, but we must act now. Let's join our voices with all of creation and sing a song of thanks instead of lament. Water runs joyfully and freely without notions of borders or politics. If Winnipeg was born from water, we're still linked to the rest of the world through the constant flow of this essential part of life. We owe it to ourselves and to God's earth to protect the land, the sky, and the water.